Neural pathways, once severed or damaged by ischemic events like strokes, are notoriously stubborn to regenerate. Restoring voluntary motor control remains one of the most formidable challenges in modern neurology. For decades, clinical rehabilitation has relied heavily on external mechanical intervention. Recovery is typically a grueling regime of forced physical mobilization, demanding immense effort from the patient just to trigger basic neuromuscular responses. Yet, 5,000 years ago, Sanskrit medical treatises provided a specific classification for this botanical, Pakshagata Nivarani, or paralysis destroyer. This ancient designation is a functional description of a highly specific, systemic delivery mechanism for sympathomimetic alkaloids. Treating these ancient diagnostic manuals as empirical datasets offers a disruptive strategy for modern pharmacological discovery, mapping thousands of years of human trials to precise molecular mechanisms. The biological subject is Sida Cordifolia, known in Sanskrit as Bala. It is a resilient shrub, identifiable by its soft, velvety leaves and an unusually thick, robust root system. In classical Ayurvedic pharmacology, its root holds an elite status. It is the critical third component of the systemic dashmula, or 10 roots formulation, utilized for severe neurological deficits. The foundational documentation appears in the Atharva Veda, specifically Khanda 8, Sukta 7, which states that consuming the plant imparts the strength of horses and elephants. When we strip away the poetic phrasing of the Bronze Age, we find a clear clinical description of a potent neuromuscular adaptogen, a substance that aggressively heightens physical output. To understand how Bala achieves this, researchers must analyze how it actively targets and stimulates the central nervous system. The Charaka Samhita, one of the oldest surviving medical encyclopedias, provides the clinical baseline. It categorizes the plant as Vatahara, which in modern physiology translates to the aggressive regulation of the central and peripheral nervous systems. More importantly, the text deploys the specific diagnostic term Pakshagata Nivarani, proving the plant was deliberately prescribed for resolving unilateral paralysis and motor loss. This exact application is independently verified in the Sushruta Samhita, a separate surgically focused treatise from the same era. Sushruta explicitly indicates that a lipid-extracted oil of the plant, known as Bala Taila, should be applied locally to treat cervical spondylosis and severe cranial tension. The statistical probability of multiple independent classical treatises agreeing on such a highly specific set of neurological applications without consistent empirical success is near zero. 5,000 years of consistent, peer-reviewed clinical documentation across the ancient world effectively demands a rigorous biochemical audit in the modern laboratory. In the 20th century, pharmacologists began physically deconstructing the roots of Sida Cordifolia to isolate its active matrices. The audit revealed a massive concentration of a primary active compound, the alkaloid ephedrine. Ephedrine is a sympathomimetic amine. It operates by chemically mimicking the body's endogenous fight-or-flight transmitters, forcing a state of heightened physiological readiness. It possesses a powerful dual-action profile, driving intense central nervous system stimulation while simultaneously forcing aggressive bronchodilation to maximize oxygen intake. Researchers then identified a secondary quinolone alkaloid residing within the root, vasicinone. Vasicinone works synchronously with ephedrine, actively reinforcing the respiratory musculature and reducing localized tissue swelling in the airways. This specific synergy, extreme central nervous system stimulation, combined with a massive enhancement of respiratory capacity, perfectly reverse engineers the ancient clinical claim of generating horse-like physical endurance. But a critical physiological question remains. How does broad systemic stimulation actually facilitate the repair of localized motor paralysis? This diagram illustrates the neuromuscular junction, highlighting the synaptic cleft between a motor neuron and muscle fiber. When impaired, this connection degrades. The plant's alkaloid matrix fortifies this gap, triggering a high-intensity influx of neurotransmitters that forces the electrical signal through. To prevent this intense stimulation from causing nervous exhaustion, the root deploys a third isolated compound, a tryptophan derivative known as hypafferine. Hypafferine acts as a highly targeted muscle relaxant, It specifically counteracts the neurospasms and spastic rigidity that typically plague patients recovering from severe motor neuron disorders. This specific triad of compounds, ephedrine, vasicinone, and hypofurine, aligns exactly with modern clinical protocols required for rehabilitating facial palsy, recovering from stroke-induced deficits, and reversing severe neuropathy. This chart tracks the plant's secondary systemic effect. It shows a steep downward trend in the suppression of aggressive pro-inflammatory cytokines, specifically TNF-alpha and interleukin-6. The sheer potency of this localized inflammatory suppression rivals the preliminary cellular effects of heavy modern immunosuppressants like methotrexate. This dual capability defines the plant's clinical utility. It forces nerve stimulation while simultaneously protecting motor neurons and clearing the molecular inflammation that blocks natural regeneration. Even with these mechanisms verified, pharmacologists face a major kinetic hurdle. How do you ensure these dense, complex alkaloids successfully penetrate the blood-brain barrier and saturate deep nerve tissues? We find the solution by analyzing the classical Bala preparation method. Ancient physicians extracted the roots by boiling them extensively under high mechanical pressure with raw sesame oil and whole milk. This diagram shows the biochemistry behind that seemingly primitive process. While water-soluble compounds wash away, the ancient method creates a non-polar, lipid-based solvent that successfully strips and binds the fat-soluble alkaloids. This lipid encapsulation drastically alters the pharmacokinetic profile. It allows the active compounds to smoothly bypass aqueous barriers and rapidly fuse directly through the cellular lipid bilayers of the human nervous system, maximizing bioavailability. Furthermore, Ayurvedic practitioners rarely administered this in isolation. They prescribed Bala in tandem with Ashwagandha. This creates a highly optimized double adaptogen protocol. While Ashwagandha regulates the production of stress hormones like cortisol, Sida Cordifolia provides the raw stimulatory neural drive. What 20th century historians quickly dismissed as crude folk recipes were in reality functionally optimized and highly sophisticated liposomal delivery systems. We can now trace a direct line from a 5,000-year-old poetic verse to the verified molecular mechanics of nerve-muscle junction repair. The ancient Sanskrit classification of paralysis destroyer maps flawlessly onto the modern pharmacological framework of targeted neuromuscular regeneration. Because of its incredibly dense ephedrine content, Sida Cordifolia acts as a potent cardiovascular stimulant. It must be strictly avoided by individuals with hypertension or existing heart disease. Yet for researchers properly navigating those parameters, the plant holds massive untapped potential in advanced neurobiology and modern sports medicine. Treatises like the Charaka Samhita serve as precise, unmined maps pointing directly toward the future of pharmacological breakthroughs.